Welcome in, everyone. Breaking free from a difficult past and an unstable upbringing, it takes just immense, undeniable courage. Self-reparenting basically means stepping up as an adult to give yourself the guidance, the safety, and the consistency that you really needed but just didn't get when you were a kid. Growing up like that often means your home was unpredictable. You might have been walking on eggshells around your caregivers or dealing with a total lack of emotional availability. But if you're joining us today, you are already the hero of your own story. You're embarking on literally one of the most crucial quests of your life. Today's explainer is a real deep dive into exactly how to heal, how to grow, and how to purposefully build the life you have always deserved, no matter where your story actually started. Okay, let's jump right in. Over 1 million American kids face parental divorce and family instability every single year. 1 million. And look, if you grew up in a fractured home, it is so incredibly easy to internalize all that chaos. You start to feel like your struggles are just a personal failing. But to really heal, we have to look at the child psychology behind this. Think about it. Kids are inherently egocentric in how they develop cognitively. When a home environment fractures, a child does not sit there and rationally think, "Oh, well, my parents just lack the emotional regulation tools to maintain a healthy marriage." No way. Instead, they think, "I am the problem. If I were just a little better or quieter or smarter, this wouldn't be happening at all." And that creates this deeply internalized sense of being fundamentally flawed. But here's the truth. Your hidden trauma is actually a systemic, entirely expected outcome of a foundational disruption. You are part of a massive demographic carrying this invisible burden. What you are feeling, it's completely valid. And that foundational disruption, it doesn't just magically evaporate the second you turn 18. Actually, adults from broken homes have a 2 to 3 times higher likelihood of experiencing severe relationship struggles, emotional challenges, and a really hard time with self-regulation. 2 to 3 times. I really want you to absorb this data because it empathetically normalizes your pain. When you grow up in a constant state of instability, your nervous system is essentially programmed for threat. It's always on high alert. So what does a self-regulation struggle look like in the real world? Well, it might look like your partner coming home a bit late from work. Instead of feeling just a passing annoyance, your brain instantly perceives it as a catastrophic abandonment. It triggers intense panic or maybe a massive argument. So if trusting people feels impossibly hard, or if regulating your emotions feels like pushing a boulder up a hill, it is not because you're broken. It's just a direct, statistical reflection of the physiological survival mechanisms you literally had to develop to get by.
So here is our game plan for today's explainer. First, the hidden weight of trauma. Second, validating your emotional pain. Third, building an emotional foundation. Fourth, creating your support system. Fifth, mastering practical life skills. And finally, number 6, your roadmap to rising strong. It's a structured path to take you from just surviving to truly thriving.
Ultimately, self-reparenting is all about acknowledging your origin story, learning absolutely everything you can from it, and then actively leaving it behind. You're looking toward a horizon that's filled with genuine purpose and well-being. It's making this conscious shift from being a victim of your circumstances to becoming the definitive author of your own future. And I promise you, it is entirely possible to completely redefine your narrative. Section 1. The hidden weight of trauma. Understanding the invisible burden. Let's explore how a fractured home subtly, but profoundly, shapes everything in your life. The source material here breaks down the exact ways this invisible burden shows up. We're talking profound struggles with trust, issues with emotional regulation, and this unconscious, almost magnetic tendency to recreate familiar but incredibly unhealthy relationship dynamics. They share a really powerful example about a woman named Mary. Mary grew up in a house where affection was just chaotic. It was unpredictable and it was almost always tied to conflict. Because of that environment, her developing brain unconsciously linked anxiety and instability with love. So fast forward to her adult dating life. Mary finds herself constantly drawn to emotionally unavailable partners. That familiar roller coaster of chasing affection, it actually felt validating to her. It felt like home. On the flip side, when she met someone who was stable, communicative, and consistent, she'd push them away because that peacefulness just felt boring or honestly highly suspicious. She also struggled immensely with setting boundaries, constantly people-pleasing to avoid the kind of conflict she dreaded as a kid. Without conscious intervention and some really deep self-reflection, these unhealed wounds just become self-perpetuating cycles. Mary's story is such a perfect example of how deeply ingrained these patterns can get, secretly dictating our biggest life choices if we don't actively shine a light on them. Section 2. Validating your emotional pain. Tending to the wounds. This is the crucial first threshold of our journey. The big takeaway here is making a distinct shift from the old narrative to the new narrative. The old narrative is where you might minimize your pain or just accept toxic behavior simply because, well, it's what you know. But the new narrative, that is about fiercely honoring your feelings and setting very strict boundaries for your own self-preservation. And let's be real, this is often the hardest part of the entire journey. Society is constantly pushing this idea that family is absolutely everything, right? And that can induce this overwhelming, paralyzing guilt when you realize that your biological family is actually the source of your deepest pain. Setting a firm boundary, which, might even mean making the agonizing choice to limit or completely cut contact with harmful family members, can initially feel like a huge betrayal. But you have to address that guilt head-on and refuse to let it control you. Because this isn't abandonment, it is radical, absolutely necessary self-preservation. You literally cannot heal in the exact same environment that broke you. You have to create the psychological space you need to recover.
Moving right along to Section 3. Building an emotional foundation, self-care, and therapy.
Once you've carved out that safe mental space with strict boundaries, building a robust emotional toolkit is your absolute next priority. Structured therapy is fantastic. It acts as a vital guide to help dismantle those destructive patterns. But beyond professional help, you've got to adopt some non-negotiable core self-care practices. We're talking daily mindfulness to center yourself and calm that hypervigilant nervous system down. Regular journaling so you can process all those messy, complex feelings. And above all else, you have to cultivate self-compassion. Think about someone like Oprah Winfrey. Her personal journey out of profound childhood instability shows us exactly how dedicated emotional work leads to real transformation. Oprah didn't just sit back and passively heal. She did the work. She used journaling not just to vent, but to actually externalize her trauma. She gave those heavy feelings a place to live outside of her own body, which let her look at them objectively. She meticulously cultivated self-compassion by catching her harsh inner critic and actively replacing those thoughts with the exact same patience, grace, and unconditional support she'd give to a dear friend. Making that shift from self-criticism to self-nurturing, that is the absolute bedrock of sustainable inner stability.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, creating your support system. You don't have to do this alone.
We're intentionally shifting away from relying on our biological family and moving toward actively building a supportive, chosen community. A chosen family is basically a curated network of people who genuinely get your journey, provide emotional scaffolding, and actively celebrate your growth. You see, there is a massive psychological difference between biological obligation and chosen support. Biological ties, they're accidental. And in fractured homes, they're often built on guilt, manipulation, or this weird sense of debt. But a chosen family? That is 100% intentional. It's mutual, it's built on profound respect, safety, and shared values. This chosen network becomes your vital emotional anchor. It provides the deep validation and unconditional love you so desperately needed but lacked growing up.
But how do you actually build this when your whole background makes trusting people feel nearly impossible? You've got to curate your circle actively and strategically. First, seek wise mentors. If trust is a struggle, just start small. Look for leaders at work or in your local community and just observe them. Watch their consistency and integrity over time before you ever open up. They can offer invaluable lived experience. Next, build genuine friendships by focusing obsessively on quality over quantity. One highly empathetic, reliable friend is infinitely more valuable than 20 acquaintances who just drain your energy. Look for people who offer unconditional acceptance, no performing or people-pleasing required. And finally, join support communities. Find structured support groups, specialized therapy circles, or even volunteer organizations. When you connect over shared values and shared life experiences, it completely shatters that feeling of isolation.
Section 5. Mastering practical life skills. Building your foundation. Now we enter the active trial phase of this journey. We just have to be honest here. If you come from a difficult background, you're probably missed out on the practical, everyday life skills that stable families just unconsciously teach their kids around the dinner table. But taking charge of your own learning, both formal and practical, is the critical turning point. It's where you go from just surviving your trauma to actually succeeding and breaking those intergenerational cycles of dysfunction. Since you weren't taught how to navigate the world, actively teaching yourself is literally the ultimate active rebellion against your chaotic upbringing. This is where you equip yourself for genuine, unshakable independence. Let's look at how mastering these specific core life skills maps directly to some pretty transformative results. This is where all that theoretical work gets fiercely practical. It builds that profound physical safety net that was utterly absent in your childhood, keeping you out of those old cycles of poverty and dependence. Second, time management. In a chaotic house, routines basically don't exist. Everything is an emergency all the time. But mastering time management lets you command your own day. Building structured routines yields consistent progress and drastically reduces stress. You're swapping out constant unpredictability for a calm, measurable forward momentum. And third, healthy communication. What you likely saw growing up was incredibly unhealthy. Passive aggression, screaming matches, or that awful manipulative silent treatment. Practicing healthy communication means learning to use I statements, actively listening without getting defensive right away, and clearly expressing your needs without being terrified of retaliation. And that leads directly to constructive conflict resolution. Mastering these tangible skills is exactly what provides true independence and sets you up for a rock-solid future.
Section 6. Your Roadmap to Rising Strong. Taking Intentional Action.
We've reached the transformative climax of our explainer. Real growth means consciously choosing different patterns than the ones you grew up with. It's taking all of this knowledge and executing a deliberate, daily plan. The source material lays out a concrete step-by-step blueprint for raising yourself well. This isn't just theory anymore, guys. These are the exact actions you need to take starting right now, today, to reclaim your narrative.
Let's pull everything we've talked about together into 6 foundational building blocks. Step 1. Acknowledge without dwelling. Honor the reality of your past, validate how wildly unfair it was, but firmly refuse to let it become your permanent identity. You are moving forward. Step 2. Seek professional support. Like we talked about, trauma physically wires your nervous system for threat. Invest in coaching or therapy to actively rewire your brain for peace. Step 3. Establish clear boundaries. Remember that paralyzing guilt? Push right through it. Protect your emotional energy relentlessly, no matter who you're dealing with. Step 4. Build daily resilience. Put those consistent self-care routines into practice. Prioritize your sleep, your mindfulness, and that profound practice of self-compassion. Step 5. Invest in your growth. Take absolute ownership of the financial, time management, and communication skills you were denied. Pursue lifelong learning to permanently empower yourself. And finally, Step 6. Choose your path forward. Ultimately, this means embracing forgiveness. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean letting the people who hurt you off the hook or inviting them back into your life. No way. It just means freeing yourself from the heavy toxic burden of carrying that bitterness around so you can finally author an entirely new chapter on your own terms.
Take a deep breath. Your recovery is absolutely 100% achievable. Every single time you actively choose self-care over an old, familiar, destructive pattern, that is a massive victory. These small, consistent, incredibly brave choices are exactly what build profound personal transformation over time. They're the wind in your sails, pushing you right through the heavy fog of your past and guiding you toward true peace, lasting resilience, and just incredible forward momentum.
Your past informed you, but it doesn't define you. I want you to keep this powerful realization front and center in your mind as you move forward. Your unique story of surviving brokenness doesn't isolate you. In fact, it connects you to a universal, epic narrative of human resilience. Every single day is a brand new opportunity. You get to make choices that align perfectly with who you truly want to become, rather than where you came from.
So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to carry with you today. What is the very first step you will take today to rewrite your story? You've got the blueprint. You understand the hidden weight of it all. Now you hold the power to build the inner sanctuary and the vibrant, loving life you have always deserved. Rise strong and start building.